So I understand that there's been some problems with campfires around Flaming Gorge. What exactly have you guys been seeing out there?
Well, as usual, the use of Flaming Gorge is high this time of year. And with that, we have many of those folks that use the gorge camp and reside there overnight, which most of them, during the recreation, build campfires. And in that process, we end up with multiples of campfire rings along the shoreline. And since Flaming Gorge has such a large shoreline, that accounts for a lot of campfire rings. And most of those rings, the campsites are in you might say they're self-developed. They're not in a designated Forest Service campsite. So they're just a place on the shoreline where it's convenient for them to set up a camp and build a fire. With that, we probably have encountered well over 100 different campfire rings just this summer in our patrols.
So what are some of the concerns that you have with all these campfires that are out there at the gorge?
Well, generally speaking, the campfires only represent a significant problem to us once the recreators have left. So once the campers have left is if they were properly extinguished. You know, when they're there and they want to build a campfire, whatever size, making sure that they do so safely. It's what happens when they leave, is it properly extinguished? That's our biggest concern.
So how can people properly extinguish and know that they actually are putting out the fire completely?
Well, many of the campfire rings we've encountered this summer, you can tell just by looking at them whether or not they were extinguished at all. Most of them, well over half of them, were just left to smolder. They were not disturbed in any way. You could tell there was not water added to them, the ashes were not stirred, things of that nature. So simply what we ask is that using a shovel and a bucket of water, and since they're all on the shoreline, there's no excuse not to use the water that's there, to pour it over your campfire and to stir it, and to continue to do so until it stops producing steam, which you can see in both here, and using the back of your hand where it's cool to the touch.
So if it's not cool to the touch, don't leave it?
Don't leave it.
Okay. And is there a punishment that people can face if they leave a campfire abandoned when it's still going?
Oh, there certainly is. The shoreline of Flaming Gorge is actually within the boundaries of the Ashley National Forest. And sheriff's offices from both sides of the state, the Utah side and the Wyoming side, have agreements in place that allow them to patrol that shoreline area and issue citations for such things as leaving an abandoned campfire. And they can receive a citation for that.
Okay. And is the holiday a concern with the campfires out there as well?
This Labor Day holiday coming up is probably our greatest concern. Earlier in the year, some of the grasses are still green, the vegetation still has a higher moisture content, but right now our grasses are completely cured. We've been in multiple red flag days, which means our humidities are low, the vegetation is receptive to burn because it's so dry, it doesn't have a lot of moisture within it, and the winds are starting to come up. We have winds forecasted for the weekend. Many of these campfire rings are in open areas around the campfire, but with those winds, it can easily blow ash out of a campfire well over 50 to 75 feet away.
Wow, so it can travel quite a distance with the wind.
Oh, absolutely. I've investigated wildland fires that were caused from abandoned campfire that were well over 120 feet away from the ignition source, being the campfire.
So have we seen any wildfires that are a result of an abandoned campfire so far this year?
Not within Sweetwater County that I'm aware of, not speaking for the Forest Service or the BLM, but on private lands and in our monthly meetings and our weekly meetings with the cooperators of all the different wildland agencies, we haven't had one actually take place within the county. And I say that cautiously because we've been fortunate, but our neighbors have not. All three counties actually, three of the counties that border us, all have. And some of those have resulted in property loss and damage.
And people can be held responsible if they are responsible for the fire, correct? As far as monetarily?
Absolutely. Yes, they can actually receive a bill and be held liable, as well as civil and in court, for the cost to put out those fires. And those costs can easily amount to millions of dollars.
And just generally, when people are out camping and they're lighting a fire, what kind of consideration should they take when they're putting when they're placing that campfire?
Well, first, if they're gonna build a campfire, that make sure it's ringed, generally with rock. Make sure that it has a clearance at least 20 to 30 feet from vegetation. So along the shoreline, that's easy to come by along the gorge specifically. But some of those folks that recreate, say, a little mountain and other areas within the desert, they may have to actually clear some of that vegetation away from the campfire location and make sure it's down in mineral soil. So a good 20 feet or so, and then make sure that they don't build your campfire so big that your material that you're burning falls outside of that ring. Keep it all contained. And then when you're done, and before you leave that site, make sure it's properly extinguished with water and a tool, a shovel, and it's stirred, and that it is cool before you leave. Campfires can hold heat that can actually produce ash that can blow out of that campfire for up to 5 days after you've left the site. So it's a long period of time. So it's really important that they make sure that it is what we call dead out.
Okay. And is there any final thoughts that you have for people coming up on this holiday weekend as far as fire safety?
Just be smart, have fun, and enjoy the holiday that we have coming up. But when it's over, let's make sure we don't leave anything behind us that could become catastrophic or cause injury to any of those that live or work around the gorge or any other areas we recreate, as well as our wildlife.